So, when do you head out to Armistice?
2 days.
Beware, I once took a trip there. Gilly, leave the poor man alone, said the bartender. Bah, he needs to hear it.
Hear what?
The temporal fugue. I traveled through it. When I got out to the other side, everything seemed fine. That was until I came home to find my wife had remarried and had 7 kids. I left 50 years in that damn nebula. Tell you the truth, it was the best damn thing that happened to me. That woman was overbearing.
In this guide, we'll be going over navigational hazards. We're going to go over a few that were in the Astromundi cluster box set. Gravity wells. When the cataclysms broke the planets apart, they also created a number of vortexes that spin to this day. These vortices are gravity centers, and venturing too near them can cause great difficulty for any Spelljammer. Fortunately, they're not too hard to spot, depending on the size and intensity. They can often be seen from miles away, appearing as great swirling masses of space debris. When seen from afar, they're easy to navigate around, but if you can't avoid them, they cause severe damage to any craft. Gravity wells come in 3 basic sizes. Small, which is less than a hex in size. Medium wells are between 1 and 2 hexes in size. Large wells can run anywhere to 3 to 5 hexes in an area and are almost impossible to miss. While the size is important in seeing and steering, it's not much the size of the well, but the intensity that determines the danger it presents. Ships that cross a well of any size at spelljamming speeds will be forced to slow to tactical speeds by the well. Gravity wells' intensities are rated as either light, moderate, or severe. Wells that are light intensity have very little effect on the ship. Medium intensity gravity wells are somewhat more hazardous, as they often have large chunks of debris swirling about the centers. Such chunks have a tendency to impact the unwary spelljamming ships. Should a vessel enter a severe gravity well, it will find itself hard-pressed to remain in one piece. The amount of debris present within a well of this intensity makes it very likely the ships will take significant damage. Every round that the craft is in the well, it will be pummeled by celestial debris. Infinity vines. The elves of the Astromundi cluster use infinity vines as a major defense for their colonies. As a result, many ships that attack the elves become entangled in the vines. When these vessels pull away, large chunks of vine remain attached to the ships. The crews of these ships generally scrape the stuff off and leave it in Wildspace, leaving large patches of infinity vines scattered throughout. Most of these are easy to spot and avoid, but a new strain of vine is much harder to detect. The so-called midnight vines have begun to grow in as black as the depths of Wildspace, making them very difficult to spot. Lookouts have a hard time spotting these things. Otherwise, ships will sail directly into the vine and become entangled in its leathery tendrils. The elves find all of this to be quite amusing and are rumored to be cultivating the midnight vine for their own use. Fortunately, the vine is still rare and is much more difficult to maintain than the standard infinity vines. Temporal fugues. If a group of characters enter a temporal fugue, they will be moved forward in time, sometimes being transported through decades in a blink of an eye. Characters that fall prey to these temporal glitches often feel disoriented and temporarily tired while they remain within the fugue. For every hour that characters spend in the fugue, 1d10 years pass in the outside world. If a group sleeps within the fugue, their dreams will invariably be of time passing by them, or of people they know in the outside world aging and dying before their eyes. But other than the time that passes in the outside world, characters suffer no ill effects from the time spent in the fugue. It is virtually impossible to detect a physical or visual difference between the temporal fugues and the nebulae. A detect magic or similar spell will reveal a sorcerous nature of this phenomenon from within, but there's no reliable way to detect the temporal fugue from the outside. Vents. Occasionally, someone tries to escape the Astromundi cluster through the use of plane-breaching sorcery. Occasionally, these attempts do work, but more often the inherent magic of the cluster works to manipulate the magic of its own ends. Thus, there are one-way vents into the Astromundi cluster. These portals allow creatures from spheres and other planes of existence, though never the abyss, a one-way access into the Astromundi cluster. Vents are dangerous to characters because there's no telling what sort of nasty critter will crawl out. Things coming out of the vent are in danger because of the intelligent races of the Shattered Sphere are liable to attack anything that crawls out of a vent and worry about whether it was hostile or not later. Vents appear as blue ovals that seem to wink in and out. When active, that is, when something is passing through them, background scenes from various planes of existence can be seen through them. Unlike a wrinkle, there is space in a vent, and they can often take several days to travel through. Such journeys are surreal and unnerving, as those within the vent are witness to scenes taking place in the planes they move through. Wild zones. Some areas of Wildspace are also areas of wild magic. Those operate just as they do in the Groundling campaign, including wild surges. The difference is that characters in a spell-jamming helm are essentially using magic constantly. Such characters cause a wild surge every turn they travel through the wild zone, making life aboard a ship quite chaotic. Wild zones seem to shimmer a bit from the outside, but once a character or group of characters are within the zone, their surroundings appear normal. Wrinkles. The existence of these particular navigational hazards is not common knowledge. The illithid believe that they exist. The arcane know that wrinkles exist, but few others have a clue. Wrinkles are distortions of space and time that tie two distant points together. Entering a wrinkle from either end will immediately transport you to the other, often making a long trip extremely short. While it seems like these would be ideal trade routes, wrinkles are extremely hard to detect. Many travelers have passed through a wrinkle and not realized it until they checked their star charts and found themselves millions of miles off course. Another quirk of wrinkles is that they are not all permanent, and some move from one area to another. Also, a wrinkle that works one way may not work another, stranding characters in far reaches of Wildspace. Arcane theorists suppose that wrinkles are so hard to find is that many of them have their exits in the heart of Firefall and other hazardous areas. Thus, explorers may have found many wrinkles and simply never lived to tell the tale. These strange portals vary widely in appearance. In most cases, there is no space between the two ends of a wrinkle. That is, when a craft enters a wrinkle, it is already coming out the other side, with no sensation of time spent within the wrinkle itself.
If you like this and want more, please like and subscribe. Thank you.